Today we will be looking for Devonian era fossils. Here on a club trip at Hungry Hollow. It's just the beginning, so there's not a lot of folks here yet, but my plan is I want to hit that back ridge. I know that back ridge has some good stuff there, so that's my goal. So I'm on the cliff ledge and I'm just kind of picking through and looking so far. So far I found this little fragment of a trilobite segment, but I'm hoping for a whole one. You can see it's kind of this cliff ledge. I've seen the times I've been here on club trips, I've seen a couple people pull out some nice ones, so I'm gonna try my luck up here and then maybe move to a couple other spots I know have some interesting stuff. So just looking at this section of the ridgeline, you can see it's just like a proverbial soup of fossils. And right now my main goal is to find Trilobites, but you can still find some other interesting stuff, like you got a bunch of corals. Actually there was a nice brachipod over here, so I'll take that. A bit tumbled, but still nice looking. You'll also have your like crinoid bits. Here's another one. Here's a fragment of one. And you just look for kind of the stuff you want, but here Trilobites are kind of the big deal. And actually in fact, I don't get a whole one, but I've got a little lovely I believe green oxtail with the spikes, so that's cool. I actually don't have too many partial green opses that I found. Most of the stuff I found so far has been the Eldergops rana species. Here are a couple examples of the horn corals that I found so far that are pretty decent looking. This one's a good one. Here you'll find, compared to like the beaches in Ontario, these are like a lot less worn. You can be a lot more picky and come back with some interesting specimens. Like this one is actually, you can see it's multiples grown on each other. So I'm gonna take this one home and clean it up because it looks really funky. You can see I've got two big chunks that I've taken. Sometimes you see some interesting stuff. These plates can be, especially when it's wet and muddy, as you can see, these plates can be quite dirty, so you just take them home and clean them. If they're nothing super special, you know, throw them in the garden or give them to like a kid who's interested in fossils and stuff, and they'll still probably appreciate them a lot. Also, while I was kind of showing you guys the horn corals, I just noticed this little gastropod that's just eroded out of this host rock. Check it out. Looks like it's complete. It's a nice little example. So I've come across a pretty cool rock. It's chock full of trilobite parts. These are a couple sections that have just busted off. This is a partial head. It's a bit dirty now. That's a tail section. Check out this trilobite. It's the nose is all worn away, but you can see one of the eyes here, and then you can see the front of it. I don't believe it goes farther back. I checked back there and kind of tried to wet it down and rub it off, but that would have been a big trilobite at one point. So we got these tentaculites here, and it's just a spill of them. And there's a couple little hash plate segments. This is the largest one. Not a bad one. And I can actually see there's some down here. There's one. Here we go. 4 hash plate segments. All kind of just, you can see they all kind of just eroded out of this section, and you can see all the loose tentaculites. So there's just this pocket of tentaculites, and then that's what I've been told. In this area you'll find pockets of different, you'll find pockets of different species of creatures, and then you just find a certain layer and you get a pocket of this material. So in this section we can find lots of pyritized stuff, but also fishbone, which is partially pyritized, and then it probably has silica as well, which causes the blue color. So I got this Baculite that I just pulled out of here. This is probably the largest Baculite I've ever found over here. I searched for the tip. It doesn't exist, unfortunately, but this is pretty cool. This is definitely a big one for this area. So I have what I think is a partially enrolled trilobite. Could be also a brachiopod.
Oh yeah, you guys are going around that way?
Oh yeah.
What you're doing, man?
You can see the individual eye, but most of the face is missing. What a shame. Let's talk about a couple of the fossils we found on this trip. To start off with, we'll talk about the trilobites. Now, I was hoping to find a whole one on this trip. I didn't. I only found fragments. There were other people who found whole ones. I think 2 larger whole ones were found, and then a juvenile whole one was found too. And in fact, the juveniles are rarer than the larger ones. So that was pretty cool to see. I got to see it in person. But with trilobites, they are a group of ancient marine arthropods. They are known to be some of the earliest arthropods out there. They lived from the early Cambrian all the way up until the late Permian, where they finally died off in an extinction event. So far, there have been 22,000 individual species of trilobite described. Now, I didn't find whole ones on this trip, but I do have a couple whole trilobites in my collection, including one enrolled trilobite that I did find at a nearby river to where these clay pits are that I collected at on this trip. Here are the 2 whole ones I have. Well, this one technically has a little bit of damage on the side, but it's 95% there. And this is the enrolled one I was talking about. Both of these are Devonian. They're both Eldercrops rana from what I understand. And you can see that in Arkona, especially, there are layers where the trilobites form very, very well. Like, the details on this trilobite are insane. It preserved insanely well. And this one I just found basically on a riverbank, eroding out of a riverbank. This flattened or outstretched trilobite, unlike the enrolled one I showed you, came from a different location. It came from St. Thomas, from some clay hills in the St. Thomas area that are Devonian era in nature. And this one was actually found by a good friend of mine, and she nicely gifted it to me. You can see some of the side has been eroded out. It was just eroding out of one of the hills, and she found it there. But you can see they can get quite big. This is a decent sized one, even with the damage on the side. On this trip, I found a whole bunch of fishbone fragments. And you can tell at this location that they're fishbone fragments because you'll get this brown, kind of bronzy color. But then you'll also get this blue-white, what I believe is calciny, that tends to fill in the bone cells. And I'll try and throw up some close-up pictures of some of these to show those bone cells filled in. Now, these bone fragments come from placoderms, which are a type of extinct early fish. They are known for having armored scales that would have been found on their heads and or thoraxes. They are known to be some of the earliest jawed fish, and for those who know fossils, they probably know the famous Placoderm Baculites, and these bones come from that same group of fish. Not Baculites. That species of Placoderm can't be found at this location, but there are other species that have been found at this location, and these are some of the bone fragments from those types of fish. Now, at this location, you can also find the actual scales, the armored plates, basically, because Placoderm basically translates to armored skin. I've only ever found a small fragment of one, and I'll show you that. And I'll show some close-ups of that as well, because it will just be easier to see the close-ups. But I know of people who found segments of armored scales or individual large armored scales as well. Now, compared to those fishbone fragments I just showed you, this fragment of scale is minuscule, but you can see a big defining feature of the scales is they have these kind of bumpy bumps, and they also tend to have these ridges. So that's how you can tell just a regular fishbone apart from a scale. It'll have the same brassy kind of color, and it'll have those bluish hints and tinges, but then it'll also have these additional textures of bumps and ridges. And I'll try and throw up a close-up so that you can see the bumps closer up. Now, Baculites are another type of fossil that can be found at Hungry Hollow. And this trip around, I found some of my biggest ones yet. Baculites come from a small order of straight-ish shelled cephalopod. I say straight-ish shelled because there are some that have a somewhat curved shell. They are said to be the early ancestors of ammonoids, so the spiral-shelled cephalopods, and coleoids, which are our current cephalopods that we have, like octopus, squids, cuttlefish, etc. With some of these Bacutlites, you can actually see the individual chambers of the shell. So those curves on this one, those are individual chambers inside the shell, basically. On the same trip, I found a different type of cephalopod known as a goniatite. Goniatites are part of the same subclass as ammonites, i.e. the subclass of Ammonidae. In Ammonidae, the big discerning features are the structures known as sutures. Those structures can be used to determine what type of Ammonidae a fossil is. Depending on the type, there will be different types of sutures. So when comparing goniatites to an ammonite, the sutures will be different. Now this one, you can't see the sutures because the sutures are in the inside of the shell, whereas these, you can actually see the sutures on them. But there is a difference, and once you can tell the sutures apart, it's very easy to tell a goniatite apart from, let's say, an ammonite. Now, I also found some interesting hash plates of a fossil known as a tentaculite. Here is the hash plate that came from the same area I found the one I just showed you. This came from a previous trip. This is the best example of a hash plate of tentaculites that I have. Now, this type of fossil is still a debated topic on where it falls in the animal kingdom, because it has some features that it shares in common with multiple different creatures. These include cephalopods, worms, and even brachiopods. So there is a debate. I believe they're probably in the worm family. They're some type of shelled worm, but we still don't really know 100% where they actually fall in the animal kingdom. Now, I did find a couple fossils that are head scratchers that even some of my knowledgeable fossil friends don't know what they are. This is an internal cast of some type of either brachiopod or plecopod, but because the shell is missing, it's hard to 100% tell what it is. But it stands out because it's not one of the usual suspects, and we couldn't really pinpoint it. So if any of you folks have a good understanding of Devonian era fossils, especially from the Arkona region, please do let me know in the comments if you recognize what this is. But you can see it's an internal cast. It even has some little fossil fragments of other creatures that probably got caught inside the shell before it eroded away, and that stuff got fossilized in the cast. But if you recognize this shape, please do let me know. And another one that was a little weird was this one. There was a fish biologist actually collecting fossils that day, and I showed it to him, He said it vaguely reminded him of a fish spine, but I couldn't find any discernible features that told me that this was 100% fish bone. So I'm thinking it could maybe also be some type of internal structure to like a gastropod or some type of goniatite or baculite, but I'm not 100% sure. So once again, I'm asking folks who are more knowledgeable than me to let me know what you think it might be. This brings us to the end of the video. If you like this type of stuff and you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. Also, in the comments below, please let me know what you found the most interesting that I showed you guys on this collecting trip. And folks, just have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.